Welcome everybody to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast. I'm your host, Mishka Katkov, and today we're having Dave Madden, president of PlayerWON, former senior vice president of global partnerships at EA, joining the podcast to talk about ads in console and PC games. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mishka. Pleasure to be here.
So you've done a lot of stuff in gaming, and before we jump into the hot topics, start talking about Sony, Microsoft both announcing the start of adding ads into their games. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. Can you walk us through of your extensive career in games till the point of now being a president of PlayerWON?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely have. I've been circling around the topic of brands and advertising in video games for over 2 decades now. And, it's become a passion project for me to really see it happen in the right way for the industry, but most importantly for players who, really need greater optionality across the spectrum of video games. So in the early 2000s, I was a founder of a company called Wild Tangent. It was created by a couple of brilliant engineers, along with building a game service that we got shipped on every PC out of the factory by all the major manufacturers. We ended up with an advertising model called Brand Boost that was essentially the first rewarded ad model in video games, and we created that around 2002 or 2003. We were sued by a patent troll. It went to the Supreme Court a couple times. Ultimately, a couple other companies settled. We didn't. And what eventually became a Brand Boost was it became like a default way for players to get virtual currency that we created called Wild Coins in return for watching video ads. Very popular with gamers. I then worked with Facebook, convinced them to allow that type of advertising to run on the social games platform. I worked with DevLou at Facebook back probably in 2007, 2008 area, where they're going to close down the idea of some of the social game companies were doing some pretty aggressive stuff with advertising. But I showed her how brands really appreciate it and gamers appreciate it, rewarded. Became an ad type on Facebook games for a few years, but obviously Facebook games kind of came and went pretty quickly. The social games on Facebook, exciting period of time. And then I joined EA in 2011. And literally the first project I did together with Ben Webley, who's now over at Scopely, and Bernard Kim, who was running mobile publishing then, is we had Bursley build, I think, what might have been the first rewarded ad in mobile games in like 2011. And the rest is history in mobile gaming. Obviously, rewarded advertising is a huge part of the ecosystem. But I felt like there was an opportunity to really play around with the notion and test it even in console games. So I did some of that in sports games at EA, where we had most of the major sports games were tested the idea and had 1 or 2 years or more of players choosing to watch video ads deep inside the live service and get free rewards. So those tests came and went, but it gave me the idea of really starting a company with the notion of in console and PC free-to-play games, unlocking the potential for player-controlled advertising. But I would say throughout the 2 decades of work, I did a lot of stuff with in-game and around game and partnerships, some of the biggest partnerships in video games across, companies like Coke and Pepsi and McDonald's, deep sponsorships in big console games. But, kind of tried it all over the last 20 years.
So you're definitely a pioneer when it comes to ads and partnership in video games. I used to use the word OG, but that's not a good word. Pioneer is a great word.
Sure.
And first rewarded ads.
There's a lot of interesting pioneers and companies, but I've definitely dabbled in a little bit of everything here.
Yeah. And pioneers land on some minds as well. Like there's some challenges.
Yes.
You mentioned that the first ads on console and sports games, like the first ones in FIFA and then some other games. I remember Battlefields had some ads on the background. Were you working on those?
So I think you might be talking about the early massive Double Fusion days. I was still at Wild Tangent back then, but I know that there were some tests with like in-game billboards that were served into some video games across the industry. I'm not sure which games they went into, and that fad kind of came up pretty quickly and died pretty quickly as well for a lot of good reasons. some of it being the software itself seemed to slow games down and didn't necessarily work that well. But the other being that, it's not really clear that players are, in their world of fiction, they all of a sudden want to see a real billboard or banner show up in the middle of a game experience in general. Not, you can't say that exclusively, but, in certain games like sports games, it may make some sense. But I think, that first wave and some of the issues that happened around it, that preceded me in my move into to Electronic Arts. But I know that in general, across the industry, there was a big excitement. I think Microsoft ended up buying Massive, actually.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the ads definitely fit sports games. I mean, whenever you watch NFL or anything, it's just ads on ads on ads. It's everything is presented by somebody other than the NFL or the team.
Yeah, in general, in sports games, like it can fit. Brands can fit in really well because it's so natural to the environment, and it mirrors what happens in the real world, which players of sports games want to see the real world. So the big sports games already work with all the league sponsors, and they get the league sponsors involved in the production of the game. Sometimes it's on billboards or signage. Other times it's, deeper sponsorships. Like we did a really great partnership with Coca-Cola around FIFA, where, they're putting promotion for the game on cans at retail with the character Alex Hunter. And then Coke became like the sponsor of the Alex Hunter storyline in the game, which was really cool. It's a very deep integration, but those programs are amazing. They take years to develop. So they're not really turnkey things that scale across a lot of games.
Again, now I have to ask, what's the incentive to do these type of deep integrations? Like, is it monetary reason? Is it promotional reason or reach reason? Because coming from a game developers or game studio perspective, your roadmap is filled with everything. It must be pretty hard to get that through the roadmap when there's so many things that are being cut out especially from a console release that is, it's not updated. Nowadays it is updated. Back then it was just like shipped.
Yeah, the roadmaps are always super busy, and the brands have to make tremendous sense. In fact, if it doesn't make the game better or more realistic, it's not going to happen. There's not enough money trading hands between the brands, in their sponsorship of the games for the developers to want to do the work. But if you think of a brand like a Gatorade, which, in the real world, the Gatorade gets used during the game and the coach gets dunked after the game. So that kind of brand works really well into, sports video games where they're, a sponsor already. But one of the big drivers of the deeper integrations and partnerships is the retail co-promotion and the ability to put codes on pack. So, like the Coke example I mentioned, and, you're probably familiar with the Doritos Mountain Dew Power of One promotion with Call of Duty and other game. We had it with Titanfall for 1 year as well. There's a lot of game codes that get put on products that players then can unlock unique content in the game. And so usually the consumer products company will do a big promotion, maybe create some commercials to promote the partnership. And from a game developer's point of view, that's really powerful from the marketing team's point of view as well. So it's really a true partnership, but those are far and few and they're hard to do and super exciting. But at the end of the day, what players get out of those promotions is they get a code to unlock some valuable in-game content. And that's, the light bulb kind of went off for me in my head when I was like, okay, I've done a bunch of these programs. They take, 18 months or more to negotiate. You have to get a lot of lawyers involved. And then you're making a commitment, to be on pack with them. And so you have to hit certain deadlines, which is really tough for game developers to commit to deadlines. So that was the genesis for PlayerWON right there in a nutshell was, hey, wait a minute, I can put, a billion codes on cans at retail around the world, or I can give players essentially the exact same opportunity in the game dynamically by letting them unlock valuable in-game content without having to go down to a store, buy a can, crack the lid, put a code into a website. What if it just happens, auto dynamically while I'm playing the game and I get the reward immediately? And so that's really the genesis for PlayerWON, was the idea that there's a better way for games to give content to their players and reward them, and a better way for brands to play a role in that without, having to be like a needle in a haystack situation.
Okay, well, let's jump into the most relevant part of it. Why is Microsoft and Sony suddenly, at the same time, essentially announcing that they are moving or that they're adding ads into their games? They have not given any details, but one could assume that they will be rewarded videos. That's usually probably the most best performing.
Yeah, I'm not aware that Sony and Microsoft have said anything on the topic. Yeah, I haven't seen any commentary from them. I've seen other people suggesting that things are happening. There was an event in New York called the Playfronts, which PlayerWON was one of the companies that presented at it, along with a lot of other game companies. It seems like out of that, some rumors swirled after that from an article or two that was written on the Playfronts. But personally, I'm not aware of either of the platforms specifically responding or talking about it. So, but in terms of whether it makes sense or not, the answer is clearly there's a big opportunity as more and more games go into cloud services and more free-to-play gaming happens. There's got to be optionality for players coming down the road that allows them to get their hands on more game content without having to, spend either, $75 or more to get the full game, or in a free-to-play or cloud environment, pay either a monthly fee or buy battle passes in order to get their hands on all the content.
Yeah. You're not, maybe you're 100% right that they haven't said it. I just remember going through those articles and assuming that they came in from the companies themselves, because I vividly remember which might not be true because my memory is what it is, but I remember that the cheapest tier of, was it Xbox subscription that is being planned, that it has an ad element to it, and that's why it's cheaper, because there's going to be ads in the games. I might be totally wrong. This is just something that I remember reading it.
Yeah. Sounds like it makes sense. I'm just not aware of any official, I think there's a lot of speculation. Also, given, what's happening in the video space with HBO Max coming out with ad support, Netflix now supposedly going to have ad support by the end of the year, the dramatic success for services like Hulu and Paramount Plus and Peacock, where they are seeing a large percent of their users come in through the lower priced or free ad supported tiers. And then you've got services like Spotify, where over 70% of the Spotify users are on the free version. So when you let consumers and gamers, in this case, vote with their wallet, a lot of them are going to opt for lower priced or even free options. And so, if you're running a subscription service or a free to play game, you really want to cast the widest net possible and then convert, consumers and players into spenders, whether that's buying individual items, season passes, or subscription to a monthly service. The more people you can get in to sample it, taste it, and enjoy it, the better off the business model is going to be, and the competitive moat you create against other companies as well. So, that's really what happened to Netflix, is they realized we're slowing down on growth. There's new competition, and competition's coming in at lower prices, and they're doing it through, at the end of the day, user choice. Yeah,
I had to check out. I put it into Google search Xbox ads, and literally like PlayStation, Xbox could add even more ads. Microsoft and Sony considering in-game ads. Like, this is Fox Business, surprise. TechCrunch, we got Forbes, we got The Verge. So pretty credible sources are all saying, ads of the world are all saying that ads are coming, or they're being planned. It's reportedly. So yes, you're correct. The Xbox and Sony have themselves stated this, but it seems to be something that is going to happen. I mean, these are quite credible sources, and everybody. Yeah,
Microsoft bought Xandr, from AT&T a year or two ago, and that's a huge programmatic ad platform. So they've obviously got the plumbing. in place, or they're building the plumbing to make it a possibility. But I'm not aware of any official announcements.
Got it. And it makes sense because, as you said, there's a platform war going on between several parties, not only Sony and Microsoft, but Amazon is definitely there. I don't know if Nintendo is that big of a player. It has its own fan base and its own niche, but it's not, competitive against. It's more like a add-on product. Like people who buy Nintendo will buy Nintendo and Xbox as well. Anyway, platform wars going on. They want the subscriptions in. They want to have as many players as possible, but having that steep price of 10, 15, they have to be pushing that price up as the time goes on. Having an ad-supported subscription, just like Netflix will be having, means that you can have a wider audience at a different price point, but you're not still losing players. And that's probably the hardest thing in the subscription model, is to create different price points, because essentially everybody's getting the same amount. So something has to give, and this is apparently it. So it would make sense.
It's going to be an interesting time. Obviously, it's a sensitive topic. People have, in the gaming press in particular, have very strong feelings and opinions about the, sort of the sanctity of the video game or the AAA gaming space. We've taken an approach with PlayerWON that was really to go in through free-to-play gaming. And, I looked at, frankly, when I was kind of surprised how mobile game advertising evolved so quickly to be a acquisition model for essentially arbitraging your users to, getting some money from the non-spending or from your player base to then spend on marketing and other games to get people into your game. And, I definitely saw the origins of it and thought it was really interesting. I mean, the studios originally came to us at EA, but other studios at other companies said, "Hey, do you guys want to trade audience?" And then pretty quickly, companies like Ad Colony stepped into the void and said, "Hey, I can make that trading a lot easier. You guys can do it all through an auction model, in my system." And so you saw the quick expansion in mobile in-game advertising to companies like ironSource and Ad Colony and other, and now Unity, obviously, and others. In the AAA HD space, which is generally console PC, it's been significantly more challenging to have that conversation with developers and get the idea up and running, just because of the general palette is very different, and there's not an app install model. This is brands coming to big screen video gaming, trying to reach the young, 16 to 34-year-old audience that doesn't watch TV anymore. So there's a tremendous, advertiser demand that in the US alone, it's, an $82 billion a year connected TV, linear TV advertising model. And these are, brands that are spending anywhere from $250,000 to $2.5 million making their creative. And they're not necessarily looking for a click through. They're hoping to reach an audience that is forming their buying behavior habits and convince them to think about using their products or going to their stores. And so it's really the same stuff that you see on, that we're working with brands that you see during the Super Bowl, those types of ads, as opposed to, an app install ad for another video game.
Branded ads is something that has been talked about in games forever. Not in games, sorry, in mobile games. There always been the talk like brands are coming in, and brands never really came in the same extent, because, as you said, the biggest buck can be made through install arbitrage. So what I'm asking here is, how long will it take before, assuming that console and PC games the free-to-play console and PC games are going to get integrated with ads. Everybody will have branded ads. But at some point, the CPMs and the eCPMs of showing ads for other games will be just so lucrative that will be a big part of the inventory. Do you think that will happen? Yeah. So do you think that same type of way will happen on console as it did on mobile?
I'm not sure it's going to, the thing that's unique about mobile is the fingerprinting and the amount of data that the ad platform SDKs knew about the users and were able to do that very targeted, app install advertising. I don't expect that to ever be similar in the console, PC, free-to-play space, or not anytime soon. The other thing is, if you're a brand and you want to reach a gamer on a mobile device, you can do that on TikTok or Snapchat. You don't need to go into a mobile video game to reach a mobile video game player. All that data sits in other platforms, and they can reach them with maybe a better ad experience, and maybe not competing with game install advertising on the CPM basis. So there's plenty of other ways to reach them, and frankly, maybe easier ways to do it. When you get to the big screen, which we're talking television and PC, TV advertising dollars, and as I mentioned, it's a huge, $80+ billion a year business in the US. A lot of it bought, by ad agencies in upfront marketplaces, and then the rest placed throughout the year in scatter. And that's where the parent company of PlayerWON is called Simulmedia. It's a very big player in that TV advertising ecosystem. We know that the brands are desperate to reach 16 to 34-year-olds. They are almost unreachable on a big screen TV today because they're not watching, the cable TV systems that we grew up with, or I grew up with. They're not watching ad-supported TV. They're watching streaming services. Some of those may be ad-supported, but a full third of the gamers playing free-to-play console PC games don't watch any TV at all. They don't even have a TV service. So it's really very difficult for a brand that wants to, not on a small screen, but on a big screen, tell a story, sight, sound, and motion, video, high production storytelling that leads to awareness and purchase intent. Very difficult to do against the gaming audience today, worldwide. But if you use the U.S. as a proxy for it, the most advanced ad market, there's a lot of money waiting to get to the video game audience, but you can't just, it's not a simple equation. What I'm strongly suggesting in our approach to PlayerWON is it's player controlled. It's not something that just shows up on the screen or interrupts you.
Yeah. So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about Simulmedia and PlayerWON. Sure. Can you a little bit explain what is Simulmedia? And PlayerWON has spun off as its own company 2 years ago. So what is Simulmedia? What is PlayerWON? What was the market opportunity that the parent company saw to spun off PlayerWON? And why did it spun off a different entity?
Yeah, so I had been approaching the founder of Simulmedia, Dave Morgan, for a couple of years, saying, "Hey, there's this. Look at Fortnite. I watched my own kids, like they stopped doing everything and started playing Fortnite." And I was like, okay, this is a free to play model. And I surveyed the kids I'd have 17 kids in my den playing Fortnite all weekend. I said, hey, if I could get you a free skin for watching a 15 or 30 second movie trailer, would you do it? And they were like 100%. We're like, of course we would. So when we were playing around with some rewarded ads in console at EA, I had Simulmedia, which is an advanced TV platform that started by Dave Morgan, to come in and help us bring in TV quality advertising. Because the problem with doing any sort of in-game advertising is going to be the quality of the brand fill and the consistency of it. And so Dave and I decided, hey, really the marketplace is much bigger in the free-to-play world. And so we decided to launch PlayerWON inside of Simulmedia. And Simulmedia basically gives us a guaranteed flow of high-quality brand TV dollars that are thirsty for this younger audience, and a lot of the technology plumbing that was needed to get PlayerWON up and running. PlayerWON's a subsidiary of Simulmedia, and so essentially the ad sales in the U.S. for PlayerWON comes all through Simulmedia. The impetus to start PlayerWON was really looking at the growth of free to play and knowing that not very different than mobile, the majority players aren't spending money, yet they want to get their hands on all that extra content that's being created by these live service teams and is being consumed, in a variety of ways. But the biggest way is by people spending money to get it, and knowing that the players covet all this content and thinking, okay, there's got to be a better way to provide more optionality across these games and do it in a way that looks really good and feels really good to the player, most importantly. And that's not only the experience of having, like sort of total control over choosing whether or not to watch a video to earn in-game rewards, but it's also from a developer standpoint, is this going to be, consistent with their quality of experience? Is it going to help them retain and engage players? And then, as a side benefit, it may create a new revenue stream. But really the most important aspect of creating PlayerWON was around this helps engagement. It helps drive players back to the game to get deeper into the live service. And, we've actually done research that shows the players that are getting free stuff end up spending more money in the games too.
So, okay, well, a few questions regarding that. So it makes sense. Yeah. Simulmedia has all the brand contracts essentially. So for them, it's just they're offering a new vertical, a new way to reach a certain audience. The way you describe it sounds like a UFC audience, 16 to 34 male. that's pretty much.
I would say ultimately it'll be broader than that, but the majority of games we're in, that's right now in the kind of battle royale first and third party shooters, it tends to be younger male gamers today.
Yeah. And few questions regarding that. How easy it is to deal with these? So let's just go one by one. How easy it is to make a deal with a developer? Because on mobile, it's you don't even make deals. Like you just integrate the SDK or the APK and the SDK, and that's pretty much it. You're up and running, and you put in a couple of different of these mediation and add partners into your game, and you just create a waterfall between them and just start optimizing. But in this case, it probably requires a little bit of work to get them on the side of actually having ads in their game.
Yeah, that's without a doubt is the hardest part of the conversation is, and in fact, we have a very large game going live in a couple of weeks. And at my first meeting with the executive overseeing it, he said, I got into video games because I hate advertising. And I was like, yeah, I hate advertising too. Like I was so excited when, the TiVo came out and you could skip commercials because it was just abusive, but this isn't really advertising. This is like dynamic sponsorship. It's the same notion from a player's point of view. They feel like the brands are giving them something of tremendous value. So they don't see it, as necessarily advertising. They see it as like a new reward system in the game. So that's definitely the hardest part is getting developers comfortable with that notion. And then they want to see, the data and understand, what it means for their player's journey in the game. And that's without a doubt the most important thing. So like our engineering team that's building the PlayerWON API and then eventually SDKs, they all came from game development backgrounds. Like we're not an ad tech company. It's everything's built with the player in mind. And that's why we actually named it PlayerWON was to really be clear, like this is all about the benefit for the player. And if the player wins, then the developer gets greater engagement and retention. So the developer wins, more play, more pay, as they say. And then, advertisers in general understand that gaming is a really sensitive, interactive, emotional experience, and they don't want to be a bad actor in general, certainly not in these big screen games. They really buy into this notion of being a benevolent sponsor and helping players get deeper into the game. So, from that standpoint, the conversations have gotten a lot easier as we've had more and more games out there and people can see what it's doing. I would also say the market in general tends to be heading in this direction as there are more and more free-to-play games with larger audiences. Developers realize that they need optionality for their players, and that this is a way to help them not only monetize, instead of 5% or 10% or less of the players, but actually help the players get more deeply into the game without forcing them to have to buy all the items and boosts and power-ups and things.
Got it. So as always, like selling multiple different things, which is, the same thing has happened in mobile over the years and social or Canvas as well, is it will help you to monetize those who are not paying. It will help you to retain players because they'll be more engaged. And it will be safe. It won't crash your game where you have a good tech team. Right. So the SDK or the API is going to be, good. Right. That's also an important part. and players don't hate it. That's usually the research that you need, and there's a lot of elements. But I've gone through this so many times over the years, where you're trying to convince a game team to put in some ads in the game, and it's hard. Especially the bigger the game, the harder it gets, because the bigger the game, the more money they're making through the other channels. And they will say, I don't need this. I don't need this. This is going to make 5 to 10% of my revenue, not even 5 to 10, it's going to be 2% to maybe 5%. I would spend the same amount of time on adding more content, and that will give me better ROI than this. Do you face those type of conversations?
Yeah, the ROI on is pretty great. So, we're getting TV campaigns at TV CPMs, so cost per thousand. And it equates to, in the US, around 4 cents per completed video view, which is, we see 97% of the players who start to watch a video complete it. So they really want to get the rewards. And, that equates to, essentially a 4 cents total value in the US right now. And I think that'll go up as we scale the network. And, the average player will watch 7 ads or more per day. They're playing a couple hour game session. Tends to happen from the menu screen in the game. It's not happening during gameplay. It's while they're setting up their team, while they're killing time. There's actually a lot of downtime in these games. And so players actually will use that downtime to earn some free rewards. The games are starting to do some really cool stuff with like ad tracks where, after you bundle and watch a certain amount of ads, you get sort of a mega reward that can be super valuable. So they're gamifying the experience and making it really compelling and, kind of creating a surprise and delight mechanic for the players. So it becomes part of the gamification experience for the player. But if you don't want to watch an ad, you just never see it. There may be a mention in the menu screen of the game or something that's telling you, where you can get your reward and what your reward might be. But there's no reason you don't have to do it. So it's really only the players that want to do it. And what we've seen on Reddit and Discord is the players have been overwhelmingly positive. In fact, some early negative comments before a game typically is launched, but they put it in their developer notes. You'll get a couple players coming in saying, "Oh, they're turning this game into a crappy mobile game." And what happens is the other players come piling on top and go, "Wait a minute, I'm getting free stuff, man. Don't, if you don't like it, go away." And then over time, people start talking, about the players start talking about what kind of rewards they're getting and how to try to beat that system. And so it really becomes a really fun part of the overall experience, I think, for players. And so I wouldn't be, I remember the first days of putting ads into the mobile games at EA, but industry wide, it wasn't like developers embraced it. In general, it was almost a necessary evil because games weren't monetizing as well as people wanted them to. But now you look at the sophisticated mobile developers like Zynga, where they really have built a science around, and others, and how they integrate the advertising in and make it part of the game, core loop and mechanic. And from the design phase of the game, we're not there yet on the AAA console free to play, but I wouldn't be shocked if in a year or two this moves pretty quickly. Maybe not as quick as it moved in mobile, but it's going to move pretty quickly.
What kind of does PlayerWON offer any kind of segmentation tools when it comes to these ads? So, meaning, does everybody see the ads in certain geo, or how is that throttled, or are they shown to players we're not monetizing, etc.?
Yeah, so we definitely give the tools to the developer. We actually built a whole developer portal. They get to see the creative before it ever runs. They approve the creative. They have control over the creative. So to some extent, the developer's really running the ad system themselves, and we're providing, the inventory for them. We provide the technology, the API, and we manage it all from the cloud. But really, the developer is in complete control of the location, the type of rewards, the frequency, which ads they want to approve, which ones they don't. We see developers now running a lot of house ads as well, promo. So, if you're watching the Super Bowl, great example, about a third of the ads that CBS ran during the Super Bowl were promos for their upcoming shows that were about to hit the new season. We're finding the developers are really enjoying using this video palette that their players are choosing to engage with to promote season passes, updates, other games in their development studios, things of that nature. So it's starting to look like a more sophisticated approach. And then ultimately, we'll have more micro segmentation as the network scales. And, we are building the mediation layer and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's pretty much developer control over the system.
And how do you find these developers? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm so happy that the industry shows are back on, because we launched PlayerWON during COVID and all the meetings were over. First of all, the outreach was like over LinkedIn and through contacts that I've built up over the years. But going back to DICE and then GDC and then GamesBeat in LA, it's just been wonderful to actually see people in person and be like, hey, do you guys want to check this out? And just sit down for 2 seconds on an iPad and show them it. And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been reaching out to you for 12 months on. Like, oh yeah, let's get a meeting. This is really cool. Let me bring it to my development team. And so, it's a trust model to start. I think over time, this will be an industry norm. But there's also a lot of other stuff going on that there's a lot of hype around these in-game billboards and other things. So creating a little bit of distance and clarity from that model has been super important for us too.
Okay, so shows, ads, the personal contacts. Those are probably the most important.
Deconstructor Fund. Can I do a little? Being a sponsor of Deconstructor Fund was. It's been really positive for us. So we've gotten great leads, and I'll be happy to tell you more about it later. But we've gotten some great leads from your podcast. So you guys clearly have industry leaders and people that are developing and designing games and game business models listening in. We've gotten a number of good partners through that.
Awesome. That will be then the business case. I did talk to one. Advising one of AAA developer on a certain project for a good amount of time. And we're talking about, going through business model discussion and so forth. And it was like, well, there's an opportunity to do ads. And they're like, yeah, we know all about PlayerWON. That's
funny.
I was like, yeah, we've heard it. Like, you don't need to give us a pitch. I was like, all right.
We actually have some of the more like the companies that do system, I wouldn't call them system integrators, but there's a bunch of live service companies popping up that have taken an interest in what we're doing. And so they're adding us into their menu of options when they're providing a live service analytics platform or development platform for big developers. They're actually, building us into that as well. So we've actually picked up like an extended sales force in this, from the standpoint of everybody kind of sees it and goes, the light bulb goes off. You go, oh, well, that seems pretty great. I mean, player control and, more engagement, more money. And sure, we'd love to help you guys do this. We believe in it. So it's been really positive to see the uptake from, people that are very deep into the game industry and understand where the economies are going.
Yeah, this is a part of discussion when the game project goes into a phase where you're actually projecting revenue for the executive meeting and you're seeing your payback returns. You'd be like, what are the other ways we can do that? We already added the battle passes and we're already projecting this and that. And then I'm like, well, the return on investment improves slightly if we add ads. Okay, let's do that. What else we can do? So it's kind of part of the arsenal. And that's good. It just makes it, you just have more opportunities to monetize. Anyway, I wanted to ask, what kind of developers are you looking for? Are you looking for big ones like the Fortnites that will make the bank, or are you more looking for pretty much everybody so that you can have as big of a reach as possible? Or what's the approach?
Yeah, our so far we've started out with some pretty, we're in a number of top 25 free-to-play games on, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. And we've got some longer tail games as well, and we've got some pretty big ones coming on board. So it's really a mix. We're building a network of games, and that will, to your earlier point, that will start to broaden the demographic a little bit as well. I think, the initial games coming on board tend to be battle royale and third-party shooters and things, but over time, I expect to have a pretty large library of games, and then for brands, then you can start to segment the audience into targets that they want to reach. But ultimately, obviously, the biggest games drive the biggest brand awareness. So advertisers, at TV scale, they like to buy on an efficiency basis. So they spend millions of dollars a month or tens of millions of dollars a month through Simulmedia. And so, when they deploy money, they prefer to deploy it. Right now, we're really working with test budgets and early partners, but ultimately to unlock the TV marketplace, you really need to be able to deploy, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a month for a brand, because that's how their ad agency models are built for efficiency.
Got it. And what does the inventory tend to look like at the moment? Like, is it global? Is it more for tier 1 countries? How does it look like?
Yeah, so these games go live globally. We're really focused. We've got partners in the key global markets: Latin America, Canada, Western Europe, Korea, Japan, and then in the second tier, third tier countries. Over time, we expect to be able to bring in more of like a programmatic model. But right now, that we're really trying to be very controlling over what the quality of the ads and what type of advertising come in, and we don't think that the programmatic marketplace is up to scale for that yet. So we're working with managed campaigns in those markets, and then we recommend that the developer give players in the second tier, third tier countries the ability to earn rewards as well, but primarily use cross promotional ads in those markets. As those markets develop, from an advertising standpoint, we'll add them on, and but there may be some markets where just the juice isn't there's not enough juice in the squeeze. So it's not maybe worth just not strong ad markets that might have a decent PC player base or something like that.
And that probably affects a little bit in what kind of partners, what kind of games you're looking for. They have to be essentially have meaningful certain type of audience in certain type of countries, correct? Like you wouldn't want a game that is massive in Thailand.
Correct. And that's why console PC cross-platform is great, because the console markets in general tend to be, the 13 or 15 countries. And then, but we are broadening. We've got some PC only games as well. And I think over time it'll work, in every major market, but we're pretty early in on this. So we're not creating expectations, that we can monetize Thailand or, pick any, an Eastern European country where there's a lot of players, but not a lot of ad budgets in the market.
Yeah. That makes sense. Then what are the sort of games that tend to work best with PlayerWON? Like, do you have specific genres based on the type of audience you're looking for, like 16 to 34, that definitely leans towards shooters and racing, sports games?
Yeah, racing, shooters. I think the audience will broaden. 16 to 34, it could be 16 to 48. There's obviously huge audiences younger than that on Roblox and Minecraft. I think those are really super exciting platforms. But there's not necessarily tremendous amount of TV dollars chasing that, those younger audiences. And there's a lot of, COPA and compliance issues there. So we're not really focused on that today. But there are massive audiences, across all ages. And obviously when you get to mobile gaming, you really get the more casual, older female audience in games like Candy Crush are just ginormous. But right now the sweet spot tends to be, in that more action, dynamic MOBA, battle royale, sports area, racing, you name it. And I think, there's so much opportunity there, just such huge audiences. You look at, games like Fortnite and Warzone and PUBG and Apex Legends, you go with, like if you take any one of those games, their audience on a daily basis is bigger than any TV network in the US for reaching that younger demographic. I mean, just like they dwarf 10x, 20x the size of what NBC is going to reach on any given day for that demo. That's why brands are so excited about this. And but to our earlier conversation, it doesn't make any sense if the players don't appreciate it. It's just just a recipe for disasters. You have to really get the experience right first and make sure the players love it and are asking for it. And I see that, kind of We see that right now. Like if you're a player in pick France, maybe we have a game that hasn't gone, it's live in the US, but not live. PlayerWON's live in the game in the US, but not in France. And the players in France are complaining, I want to get PlayerWON. I want to get free stuff. And so I think players are going to start demanding this of their free-to-play games as an optionality choice. And when you do that, then it really makes it possible to broaden the classes of games as well.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen in mobile as well. Like players in tier 2, tier 3 countries, if you don't have inventory there, tend to complain, as well as players who are not shown ads because they are deemed as, if they are monetizing and you don't want to show them ads because normally the ads that we show are from other games, then they are also a bit pissed off or they actually send just customer tickets, the tickets to the customer support of like, I'm not seeing ads anymore. What's happening? Like something went wrong and I'm not getting my free gems from the ads. Like, well, something happened. You paid $50. That's what happened. So.
Yeah, and I don't think developers want to see ads for other competitive games in their games in this winner take all free to play space. So I think that's the importance of really having a brand marketer model as opposed to app install competitive game model, which for whatever reason has seemed to work in mobile, but is definitely not the approach that we think. There's enough massive budgets worldwide and brands desperate to reach the gaming audience that this has legs to it on its own without having to bring in a lot of game advertising the way the mobile industry has had to do it.
And in terms of like direct monetization, you mentioned 4 cents, but in terms of like let's say ARPMAU, like what kind of a numbers are developers looking at? Assuming that they have
we tend to
very healthy tier 1 audience.
Yeah, so we tend to look at ARPDAU. So we base everything on a DAU model, and then I don't know exactly how they end up, weaving that back into their models. But in the U.S., we can on average we'll have a player watching, as I mentioned, around 7 ads per day of the cohort that chooses to watch ads. So it should be clear, not 100% of the players choose to watch ads every day. It's a decent, double digit figure, but we see that's like a real opportunity. And the hardest part of the business is really becoming part of the live service mentality at the games and having them weave it into the the valuable rewards and the gamification of it all. But when you do that, so I'll just use the U.S. as a proxy. 7 ads times 4 cents. That's sort of the ad ARPDAU gross, and then there's the majority of it goes to the game developers. So it can be pretty meaningful money on a daily basis against the cohort that's choosing to engage with ads, and then the hard work is around getting that percentage up to the majority of the players over time, and that's what we're aiming for, and we think that's will help support game economies in a way that's really healthy, and even like we recommend developers show spenders and non-spenders the same opportunity, and that's what they're doing so far because it's actually led to deeper spending and re-engaged spenders in the games.
Yeah, of course. It happens by being done monetization quite a lot. So it happens when they get a little drip and they get closer to a certain purchase that they want to make, and that drip comes from a premium currency, and then they tend up to convert because they're closer to it, and just normal human behavior. So tends to be like that. Is it difficult to so you said you have an API at the moment and it will turn into an SDK at some point, and it's easy to implement. You have like your internal team. I'm asking this because back in the days, and I'm kind of like pushing this back when I was integrating first time ads into a mobile game, that was like 2012, 2013. And we had like, if an SDK caused an issue where the game was down for a while and these games made a lot of money, then that SDK was out forever. I mean, they had to fly from the US and bow and ask for forgiveness and promise eternal love in order to get the SDK back into the game. But like, what's how difficult it is to integrate one of those that you have?
So I know those mobile SDK days very well myself. I had some late night phone calls, particularly around bad ads. And you couldn't figure out what ad network they came from, which is the whole thing we're trying to avoid in this very pristine model, which is only good ads coming through.
And the games that I was putting them in had a big audience. So that was, of course, it depends on the game, but those were like tier 1 games. Like,
right. And you don't want bad ads and the whole, and the thing. So 100%. So we built an API. We will have an SDK for Unity and Unreal, but the developer is coding it into their own game. The only real challenge is if it, sometimes there's proprietary engines that can be, several year or many years old that don't have a video player. So then, that's all modern game engines come with a video player. So it just works. But if you don't have a video player, then there is some work in, encoding in a video player capability into the experience. But that seems to be the biggest challenge. I would say the work has not been around integrating the API or going live with it. It's the work is much more around the UX UI. What is that? How do you make it a great player experience? How do you make it part of the flow of the game, not something that seems out of place or is jarring? And then how do you create the reward model that is conducive to driving, reducing churn, driving engagement, and making people feel really good about donating 15 or 30 seconds of their time, because that's, at the end of the day, the player's going to make a calculation. Like, that 15 seconds was worth it or it wasn't worth it. And if it's not worth it, they're not going to come back and do it again. And so I'd say that's where, getting that mix right is definitely the most, where the most work is right now. And we've got a live service team. We've got a developer success team. We've got, game engineers to help, work through all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's actually a good call. I remember, like, again, back in the days, the game lead on Heyday, which was one of the biggest farming games. They had a very
had a movie theater, right? Wasn't there like a movie theater in Heyday? Yeah,
exactly. So the interesting part is that the game lead kind of put in a challenge for the designer, for the team, of like, I know everybody hates ads, but what would the best in class, like, let's show everybody how you do ads, and let's make the coolest thing that is most integrated. And the way they constructed it is 2 ways. Like, back then, banner ads was a thing as well. So there was this in-game auction place. So they would put in ads also as a part of the in-game auction place. Like, there would be potatoes and wheat and, like, suddenly an ad for a different game, and then so forth. Like, as you're scrolling through the newspaper, and those were custom interstitials. And they got insane amount of views just because it's something that you do in the game all the time. And the second part was, the movie ticket. And the way they did it also was, well, first of all, a movie, which makes sense. And because it's hard to show a video ad otherwise. But secondly was that the ticket was hidden somewhere on the level. So you found the movie ticket. It's like, yes, I found the ticket. And now you get to watch an ad. Surprise. So it was done by the player. It was initiated by the player, but it was a positive feeling because you found the ticket, you found the ad. Right. And instead of it being pushed or even asked whether you want to watch it or not. So that was like a brilliant way to do it. And yes, it monetized incredibly well back in the days. So that was pretty killer.
Yeah, I remember that in Heyday. You guys were early and brilliant on it, and clearly people are gaming because they like the challenge of gaming, the experience. And so you want you don't want to create something in the game that just sort of is static and generic and the same thing over and over again. It gets boring. I mean, people want to have the same surprise and delight that they get from finishing a level or beating a boss, and they want to get the same experience in the reward mechanic too.
Yeah, that's just I always remember that approach of kind of like challenging the team instead of forcing them to do something that they don't want to. Just challenge them. Let's do something crazy. Let's have fun. Right. So that's the part. I've asked a lot of questions. What haven't? This is really fun, by the way. What haven't I asked about ads in PC and console? I assume you're doing PC and console, right?
PC and console, yeah.
Okay, so even that question was asked now. Did I forget to ask something that I should be asking about games, about ads in sort of triple?
Yeah, I think the games are. You should. I'm not saying you should ask me anything, but I will suggest that I think games are obviously going clearly completely cross-platform, and with this weekend, I've yet to be able to successfully get on the Fortnite on Xbox cloud service, just kind of spins. But the idea that you can play a game on any device really makes this compelling for brands. And so, yeah, I think this will end up, PlayerWON will end up across platform, on mobile devices, on direct-to-TV sets that don't have a game console hooked up to them. I mean, ultimately, this is just a technique to get players more engaged and feel better about the game economy and get access to content, not have to depend on whales for complete success, which was part of the issue with, I think, mobile gaming. And ultimately, we see PlayerWON, brands giving us the rights to say, hey, just help us run the most effective campaign across all these devices at once, and start to manage it to success on the by platform through your cloud-based and machine-learned AI system, which is what we built. But right now we're really focused on console and PC because that's the early learnings for brands is we're getting big screen budgets, so we've got to put it on a big screen.
Well, there you have it, everybody who's listening. If you have a PC or console game, it's free to play. This is the way to add a nice little buffer into your budgets to keep on developing stuff, because you can start monetizing audience that is traditionally not paying. And the best thing is you're not losing that audience because you're not showing ads of other games. You're showing brand ads, and PlayerWON can actually bring the brand ads because you're part of Simulmedia. So that's a good offering. Excited to hear the new games that will be coming out with your ad monetization system. Very excited to see how this evolves, whether it will be similar than the evolution of mobile gaming, or whether it will be totally different and more like evolution of interactive ads in interactive media type of experience. So So thank you, Dave, for joining and kind of like opening up the books on this sort of a new industry. Do you have any competitors? Like, are you the only player in the sphere, or there's more coming in?
There's a ton of excitement around the dynamic background billboard space right now, and I think I'm counting like 15 companies that are all, getting funded and chasing that. I think the jury's out on exactly how much brands are going to enjoy that experience. So I think that's where most other companies' energies are focused right now, frankly.
Yeah, that's BS. That's banner ads. Let's get out of here. We've seen banner ads before. Like it sounds fun. You get a lot of volume, but you don't get a lot of action. So that's I can tell that already. Yeah. I've seen it over the last 7-8 years. No, the rewarded video is where it's at. It has to be a moment. Player chooses it. They watch a video. There's call to action, or just they can be a call to action, because if that's actually interesting. If I'm playing mainly AAA, I'm playing on iPad sometimes and on PC.
Yeah.
But I would have my phone free when let's say I play TFT on iPad. So if there's a call to action, I can actually do that call to action of a brand, if it's
correct,
Nike or whatever, by just phoning it in, just opening up my phone and
we're doing campaigns with QR codes right now, and the response rates have been really great. Yeah,
exactly.
Players will have their phone there, and they'll just scan it and keep playing.
Yes, because you have another screen right next to you. That's actually I didn't think about it, but yes, you can. It's like watching Netflix. You can do two things at the same time.
We actually do our player surveys to get player satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So we stay very close to how players feel about what we're doing, and do they feel like the rewards are valuable enough? Mm-hmm. And we just pop a survey into the PlayerWON container with a QR code, and we'll get 2,500 respondents within a couple of hours on a survey telling us exactly how they feel about the rewards. We actually do brand lift surveys for the advertisers as well.
Yeah.
And so we've seen like a quick serve restaurant brand saw a 300% increase in purchase intent, and we just all did that live. And as they were playing the game, they answered the survey. Yeah, I've heard of this one. I haven't heard of that one. I'll go to this one, not go to that one. And we, it's very powerful medium. interactive. I mean, people hands on a controller, right?
Let me do anything while I'm in the lobby. Like, I mean, while I'm
Exactly.
waiting to be matched. Like that, those are the games. Like, of course, I'll watch 3 videos while I'm, because I'm on my phone when I'm in a lobby, when I'm waiting to be matched, when I'm waiting, especially on the times when you're here in Finland, it's a different.
So we're doing that too.
Yeah.
We've got an ad track where you can watch 4 ads in a row, and you can choose, and you can say, I want to watch 4 ads in a row, and I'm going to get 4 times the rewards, and then jump in and play.
Yeah. Just stop the ad when I'm being matched. That's the only thing. Like then I want to go back.
And you know what happens with us if an ad is running and the match is ready, we shut the ad down, but you still get the reward.
Oh wow! See, all right. There's no reason not to do it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Dave, for really kind of giving an insight
on
vertical. Happy that you got business and hope you get more, because I truly want to support this, because it's a valuable way for developers to monetize. And monetization is important because it allows you to keep your operations running. It allows you to hire more people. It allows you to produce more content. So if you find ways that are not predatory, that people like to be monetized that way, there's nothing bad in ads. We watch ads all the time, everywhere. So games is no different, as long as they're well designed and well implemented. So that's it. So thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you, Mishka.
Thank you everybody for listening. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me.